So first we're going to start with this idea of the other. And by doing this, we're going to start with 1931's Frankenstein. So in this movie, you might be thinking there isn't any black representation. And you would be right, there are no black actors in 1931's Frankenstein. However, that doesn't mean that black people and black bodies weren't somehow being represented. That is through this idea of the other. The other in this situation would be Frankenstein's monster, this scary, deranged, violent thing that we don't understand and we can't control. And that was basically the only representation of black bodies in media in the 30s. And then we skip to 1954, A Creature of the Black Lagoon, where we still very much see this idea of the other as the only representation of black bodies in these movies. I mean, that is a whole 20 plus years later, and still we don't have any black actors. We just have this character of this monster that we don't understand, this other group. And that, unfortunately, is the representation for that time of black people in the media, in horror. Now we are going to the 80s, which a lot of people would probably say is the prime of horror movies. So while we look at the 80s, we're going to look at 3 separate movies. All of these movies are going to cover different tropes of black characters, and they're all going to come back with one significant theme. So to start off, we're going to go to the 1980s exactly with The Shining. The Shining actually happens to be one of my favorite horror movies of all time. That being said, there is one kind of glaring problem with it, and that is the character of Halloran. Halloran is the only black character, and he's not a bad character to start with. You know, he has the shining ability. I don't know if you have read the book, but if you have, you would know that his character does not die in the book. So that was just a choice made to kind of up the stakes of that. And that's something we see a lot, is this character of the black sacrifice, the person who is basically going to do anything to help their white counterpart. Even if it doesn't exactly make sense, you know? His character dies, even though he has this power to predict what's going to happen. He doesn't see someone about to hit him with an axe. I mean, it doesn't exactly make sense. But it's used to up the stakes and to further the development of the white characters, which is something you're going to see a lot in these movies through different ways. The next movie we're going to talk about is Friday the 13th, A New Beginning. In this movie, we're going to talk about the character Demon by Miguel A. Nunez. This character is not a super big character. In fact, it happens to go to that trope of the black character dying first. Yeah, we've all heard that one before. It's not always true, but I think where it comes from is this idea that a lot of times black characters are really just put in to die. Even if they're not dying first, they don't really have the character development of the other characters because we know we're just going to kill them off. You know, they're kind of just a punchline, especially this character, for example. He literally dies singing on the toilet. I mean, it's a funny scene and it's fun, but I mean, that was the representation at the time, dying on the toilet singing. Now we're going to go a little later into Friday the 13th, 3 Dream Warriors. And we have the character of Kincaid. This is in 87, so it is a bit later in the decade, and this is probably the best representation of the 3 that I have mentioned. Kincaid actually survives the whole movie. He is a badass dream warrior. He's got the same powers as the other kids. You know, he can fight really well. He's pretty cool. Now, in the next movie, he does die, but they pretty much kill off every character from the past movie, to be fair. My problem with this character is it once again goes into the overall theme, which is basically they're kind of just there to help their white counterparts. Even if it's not in their best self-interest, you know? I guess you could say in Friday the 13th he doesn't really do that, but I mean he's there to be a kill, you know, to up the amount of kills, to show the danger, and once again to help the white counterpart with their own character development. And that tends to be the main problem with black bodies use in horror films in general, and it's something you could see easily in these 3 films for very separate reasons. So this brings us to 1992's The Candyman, with the titular villain played by Tony Todd of the actual Candyman. This movie actually has a lot of amazing things about it. The fact that it has one of the few movies that actually has a black antagonist, and the fact that he has a fully fleshed out character. He has a fully fleshed out story and a real reason for what he's doing. That being said, there are some flaws with this story. So to do it, I'm going to just give you a quick rundown of what that story is. So our titular Candyman, also known as Daniel, sorry for the dogs, also known as Daniel, was in love with a white woman when he was younger, and because of that, he was killed and tortured. So this leads to the present day where he is torturing people who say his name 5 times because of this. So that seems like a fine enough plot. It has a lot of backstory. The problem is the people that he is torturing are people of low income areas who are poverty stricken, which doesn't exactly make sense when in the scenario he has some Upper West Side people pretty close by that would make more sense to torture considering his situation. And then we also have the fact that the main protagonist is a white woman that he is lusting after, just giving into that trope of black men lusting after needing white women, having this desire for them. But that being said, Tony Todd, I apologize, did amazing as the titular villain and really made him a horror icon. So all of these different tropes and ideas lead to the creation of these stock stories of black bodies just being used to advance the white counterpart, really not having a lot of personality. They're just to be a punchline, not really ever a full developed character. And that stock story leads to the story of the people that are affected by it. So in order to get that point of view, I've asked some of my friends how their representation in horror movies specifically has affected them. Okay, so I love horror movies. That being said, I've always hated how the black person is killed off in the first half. Growing up, I guess you can say it made me feel like the world thought black people lacked basic survival skills. The way that black people are portrayed in such movies is a complete misrepresentation of black people/culture. The ignorant decisions made are not common survival responses of black people, which is why you go to watch a horror movie at the theater full of black people and you'll hear in unison outbursts of what the character on screen should be doing, like, oh hell nah, or couldn't be me, or what the fuck are you gonna do there? Unisonly, we are in agreement that we would never make such dim-witted decisions. As people, I feel we've been through so much trauma, trials, and tribulations and shown tremendous strengths and resilience that our chance of survival in any traumatic situation is way greater than what is expected/portrayed of us. Overall, I feel black people have been grossly misrepresented within media, but due to an increase in black people in media, the narrative is being rewritten and a more accurate depiction is being presented. Of course, stereotypes are still there in order to appeal to masses, but slowly and surely, black people's excellence is shining through. A horror movie I feel represented blacks in a more accurate light is The Purge, the first Purge, and the last one that came out, or badass Michonne from Walking Dead. Michonne embodies a black woman's strength, determination, resilience, beauty, and strong will to survive. Well, first things first, I have to start by saying, as an actor, I used to think it was annoying how a black person portraying a character would get killed off. But now I look at it as it was a character that was written and the casting director chose to cast a black person. Writers don't go in saying, I'm writing this part for a black person, and they will get killed off. Now I always ask myself, why can't the casting director cast a black person for one of the characters that doesn't get killed off? Watching movies as a horror fan, I dislike the idea of black people getting killed off because even though it's a movie, the scenario still makes a difference. And depending on the situation, black people's first instinct is to flee the scene, not investigate. So why would they get killed off? I think that in movies in general, it kind of made me box myself in because, for one, I never really saw roles where black people were in successful positions. It was always movies about people growing up in the hood and were very poor. I can't speak for everyone, but that's mostly what I saw. But it also trained my mind to think that I couldn't go very far as a black woman in America, and I really had to unlearn hella shit to realize that I can be more than the white person stereotypical view of a black person. Also, sometimes I just wish I could see people like me in regular positions. After watching Midsommar, I feel desensitized and exhausted. Watching black people be the first to die, whether it's blatant racism of the murder or lazy writing on screen, there's often little to no development, and it's just exhausting. Another thing I hate about that is our intelligence is compromised by knowing too much or being the pessimistic one. That needs to be eliminated. For example, I recently watched Midsummer and was definitely anticipating the black character, I believe his name was Mark, was met with microaggressions, being the only black person in the group, and often not taken seriously, even though he was a dedicated historian. Oftentimes, I notice that these deaths happen swiftly and easily forgotten, much like blatant murders that happen every day. Now we're going to be talking about the counter stories that are available in horror. This is actually one of the great things about horror movies, is that they're so wide. There's so many different varieties, different types of horror movies, and even mainstream horror was able to get that counter story in a couple of times. And the first time we're going to be talking about is actually in 1968, which is a long time ago considering, a lot of these movies take place in the 80s. And we have our character of Ben, who is a black protagonist, killing all these zombies, saving the day. He actually almost even lives in the end. The way he dies makes sense for his character and actually adds to the plot a lot, which is something we do not see very often with black characters. They just die to die a lot of the time. That was not the case in this scenario. And he's truly such an amazing representation of what the media could bring even as far back as 68. So this brings us to the 2010s, where we are today. And I'm specifically going to talk about the director Jordan Peele and his amazing movies that have come out in 2006, 17, and 18. That is Get Out and Us. These are game-changing movies in the horror genre for so many reasons, but specifically game-changing movies for the black audience. These are movies made for the black audience, and that is pretty rare in media in general. They are made for the black audience by the black audience, and because of that, they're actually pretty realistic. You see Get Out, you have the main protagonist, Chris. In this movie, there is no white savior coming in to protect him. There's actually no white good guys at all, and it makes sense for what the narrative is. Chris makes logical, smart decisions as a person that are motivated by his character, as opposed to being motivated by the color of his skin. And then we have us with our characters Adeline and Gabe, who very similarly are amazing characters who have amazing things to protect. They are protecting their children. They're constantly putting their children above themselves. And you could tell they have a really strong relationship with each other in the fact that they fully trust that the other will be able to take care of themselves. In that movie, you never are going to see Adeline trying to save Gabe or the other way around. You're going to see them trying to protect their children and protect themselves because they trust in their relationship. And this makes sense for their characters. Their characters are motivated by what would motivate their characters, as opposed to, once again, the color of their skin. And that is actually the beauty of the 2010s we are in. We're still going to see a lot of issues with movies because, unfortunately, that is the norm, and it's going to take a lot to break out of that. But we're starting to see movies like Get Out that are allowing other directors of color and actors of color to see that it's very much possible to see yourself on screen and to get these movies out that are actually speaking to the black audiences, for the black audiences, by the black people, And because of that, so many other directors and so many other movies are being inspired and put into process because we're seeing that these movies can be mainstream for everyone. They're not just for black people. They're meant to be for black people, but at the same time, they still have a wide appeal to all different races and audiences. And that's really important to see because that's kind of what the media has been fighting against. They've been thinking, well, this doesn't have a wide enough appeal, and Jordan Peele proved them wrong, and it's amazing. And it's just showing how many great strides we still have to make, but how many we have made as well.